If that is the condition in the US, then of course it is exactly the same sort of situation in every other country. And what happens is that the Obama administration is doing something which the others are not doing. It's actually spent $250 billion towards preventing dispossession of housing. Now, normally the bourgeoisie say there's no money for working people. Money is available in huge sums, in trillions of dollars, for rescuing the banks and large corporations, but nothing to prevent workers from being dispossessed of their houses. And some people have complained, why is this money being spent? And a bourgeois author comes along and says, it is good insurance. Bankers are not very popular these days. It's an understatement. Bankers are not only very unpopular, people are calling for their instant shooting and execution. But the fact is, when you're throwing hundreds of billions, trillions of dollars to rescue the banks, to put $250 billion to preventing some dispossessions is a good insurance to make actually people think that the system cares about ordinary people as well. It won't save them, but it's a good insurance policy, and that's why the Obama administration, which is far more clever than its predecessor, or several predecessors, is doing that. Obama is very good for American capitalism. Because he's an intelligent representative of American capitalism. And I personally prefer to have American capitalism represented by the most stupid people, because it's a stupid system. It should be represented by stupid people. And, you begin to dislike it much more easily than you do under somebody like Roosevelt or Obama or something like that. Europe's economy is also shrinking at a dizzying speed. Just in the last quarter of 2008, it shrank by 1.5%. Considering that the European Union's economy is the largest economy in the world, 1.5% shrinkage is no small thing. Its largest economy, that is Germany, in the last quarter of 2008 shrank by 2.1%. And it's considered, when the figures come out in 2-3 weeks' time, in the first quarter of 2009, it would have shrunk even more. The position in Britain is similar. The IMF predicts that Britain's economy will shrink in 2009 by 2.8%. And this is in a country whose former Chancellor of the Exchequer and the present Prime Minister had boldly, not to say foolishly, declared that he'd abolished booms and busts. He doesn't refer to these statements anymore these days, considering the state of the British economy. If you look at that wonderful place, which so much was happy to have got rid of the vice-like grip of communism, namely Eastern Europe, and how these economies were supposed to be thriving, they are in real trouble. Governments have fallen across Europe, from Eastern Europe to Western Europe. Iceland had its government fall because of the crisis. There have been riots in a number of major European countries. There have been strikes in France. There have been strikes in Britain. There have been workers marching in Britain using Mr. Brown's own slogan, British jobs for British working people. And there have been falls of government in Eastern Europe. Latvian government have fallen. People fought pitched battles in Riga against the police. The government in Hungary has resigned. The government in the Czech Republic has fallen. And no government in Eastern or Western Europe is safe in the present conditions. People in Eastern Europe were encouraged to take out their mortgages in foreign currencies. Would you believe it, in Swiss francs? But what has happened as a result of the crisis is, while their local currencies have actually plummeted, the Swiss franc has risen. To pay back those mortgages is no longer a viable proposition. And they are lended with hugely expensive mortgages, and as one bourgeois journalist put, with irrelevant currencies, i.e. their own, which are worth nothing. But the wonderful thing is, there's one thing the East Europeans did right. they made sure that the banks they borrowed money from them were not owned by them but by foreigners. Austria is the country that is, this was not intended, this was not intentional. The imperialist countries were gobbling up local banks. They took over all of them. Wonderful stuff. But of course, if you have gobbled up what turns out to be dust, you haven't gobbled up much. You paid millions of dollars absorbing these banks, but they are worth nothing. And so when Hungary or any of the East European countries goes down, they will not be going down, it will be Austria that will be going down. Because the Austrian exposure to these loans is the equivalent of 80% of the Austrian gross domestic product. So this could end up in a puff of smoke. So at least they did one thing right. Okay, we'll borrow, but we'll borrow from our local banks, which are owned by you, and so you'll take the losses. Japan, the other miracle of capitalism, after having gone through a stagnation period of 10 years, and when it was considered to have come out of it, is back into the same, not just stagnation, but declining production. For the first time since 1996, last month, Japan suffered from something which is not associated with Japan, a current account deficit. Its imports were greater than its exports. The result was that the Japanese stock market simply plunged. And one bourgeois writer, Philip Stevens, writing an article on Asia, says paralysis is almost too upbeat a description of the country's political condition. Now, if paralysis is an upbeat condition, if somebody is suffering from paralysis, and you say, call him paralytic, it's almost upbeat. So you can see that kind of trouble you are in. And as a result of this current account deficit, of course, which is a reflection of the falling exports, which in December 2008 fell by a shocking 35%. And the IMF has forecast that Japanese economy will contract in 2009 by 2.6%.